Tom Lynch stars as the Tigers pile more misery on the Bulldogs. The Eagles get on the board for season 2022 and the Kangaroos come oh so close to a massive upset in Sydney. Hello and welcome to The Round So Far, brought to you by AAMI. I'm Riley Beveridge. This is Kane Corns. Kane will start at the MCG because Richmond, as we mentioned off the top, piled more misery on the Bulldogs. They're now 1-3 on the year.
Yeah, so this was the big story. I mean, that they were backing away. They're so inconsistent, really. Richmond questioned during the week whether they had lost their hunger. They piled on 7 unanswered goals at critical stages of tonight. They got their forward half game going, their intensity around the football, their ability to win one-on-ones. Yes, the Western Bulldogs were inaccurate. I mean, you kick 7 goals, 19. How deflating is that? But on the back of last week's disastrous last quarter against St Kilda, Richmond were up for the fight tonight, ran out the game really well. And now it's just whether they can maintain the rage that they showed tonight. With some key players to come back. Like if they can get Martin back, Grimes will come back. Loston and Lambert played VFL today. Yeah. There's some good names still to come back to bolster their lineup.
Been a bit inconsistent the last couple of weeks. We saw them beat the Giants, they lost to the Saints, now they've beaten the Bulldogs. It was led by Tom Lynch though, 4 goals. First time he'd kicked more than 3 in the last 41 games.
Yeah, he was able to get those one-on-ones. I mean, the Dogs are so depleted, aren't they? They lose Cordy and Keith in their back half at selection this week, so you think that's the one area. Revolt comes back in and Lynch. So this is the one-on-one. Good luck with that. He's one of the toughest players in the game to stop, and I just thought the way he moved and presented up at the footy tonight, and clearly he got some good supply. That was an amazing effort from Baker. He went off with blood streaming down his face after that. Inspirational. But this is the sort of stuff. I mean, this is what they recruited him for. This is what they paid him big money for, and this is what we know he can do. So if you get Revolt and Lynch to stand up like this and like they did tonight, who knows how far that can take them this year.
It's also what he did throughout 2019, that premiership season when he kicked more than 60 goals. But it continued a familiar theme for the Western Bulldogs against key forwards this year. Have a look at this graphic. We saw Ben Brown kick 3, Charlie Kerner and Harry Mackay put 9 past them in round 2, and now Lynch and Revolt do it tonight. Yeah,
they're 1-3 for that reason. They have a massive issue on their list, and that is key position stock. So Tim English is a ruck. There's nothing else behind him at the moment. At times, Bontempelli was rucking tonight. What a disaster that is. Tim O'Brien comes back in, but didn't really have an influence, and he's not that big defender. They don't have a big defender. And then up the other end of the ground, if it's not Norton, who kicked 2-3 tonight and was inaccurate, Hugo Hagan was good last week but touched it 5 times this week. So yes, their midfield is great, but the reason they're 1-3 is because they are so low on key position players, and it was an area they just did not address in the trade period.
Really missing Josh Bruce up forward. An important question to come out of this one, Kane. Who wins goal of the week? Is it Shea Bolton or is it Jack Riewoldt? Because this was Bolton's effort, stole the ball, went to the boundary line, and then we saw Riewoldt with a big barrel on 3/4 time.
That's the best goal I've seen in a long time, that Bolton one. Like, he meant every bit of that, the ability to keep his feet. But we love this. Like, we should see more of this. I mean, it's really the only time we see it is after the siren, when the player is forced to do it. But he's executed that beautifully. I don't think he hit it as sweetly as he possibly could have, but you still get the extra carry. So great to see those highlights, and I reckon Bolton's going to be pretty tough to beat for goal of the year.
Yes, it was a great goal. We'll head to Marvel Stadium now, where West Coast won its first game for season 2022. Collingwood led as this game ticked into time on, led by Brodie Mychek, really, but then the Eagles came from nowhere to win it.
He took a hanger just before that, did Mychek. He took 6 contested marks for the night and looked to be the match winner, but the Eagles, they look cooked to me. They just hung around. There's Rioli kicking a really important one. He kicked 3 for the night. Kennedy couldn't miss. He was the sharpshooter. So they just, Waterman there finishing with the sealer. They were just so good to hang in there away from home in a game that no one would have expected them to win, with names like Shuey, Sheed, Alan Cripps, Gaff, Yo, Petruccelli out of the side. Good to see Darling back into some form and kicking this important one to ice the game as well. So that was how it was done, and this is a massive issue for the Pies, and that is their last quarter. That's round 4 there. That's the last quarter, and you look at the bottom there in bold, 1-5-11 to 12-2-74 in their last 2 quarters. And to think they're 37 Riley up against Geelong and lose, that would have put them 3-0. You're playing a half a waffle side, should be 4-0. They're now 2-2 with Brisbane on Friday night to come. Are you a little bit more concerned about them now?
You certainly are more concerned than you were a fortnight ago. 5 goals to 1 in the last quarter tonight, 7 goals to nothing in the last quarter last week. You just have to wonder if this chaotic style, this frantic style that Craig McRae is playing, do you think it's taking too much out of their tanks going into the later stages of the games?
Yeah, it's that balance, isn't it? Like, we love the free-flowing off half-back, forward handball and go. But I think there's some time just to suck a bit of energy out of it.
Yeah.
It's all frenetic stuff. You can kick mark for a little bit, regain your composure, set up behind the ball, because we know how you move the ball is also how you defend as well. And at the moment, they're just been a little bit too easy to score against, particularly as the game opens up when fatigue sets in.
Well, the way they play it banks on kicking long, and one man who feasted on that today was Jeremy McGovern. He's been awesome. He had 22 disposals, 11 intercepts, 8 marks and 5 intercept marks today.
Yeah, he's had a big year. Coaches votes in his last 3 games, and right from the start, they didn't really know how to deal with him. Just look how quick he is to read the ball in flight and save the day. He would have saved 4 or 5 goals today. He's so good in the air. Like, the courage just to do that and go back when you don't know what he's coming, and he's a good user on the way out. So you just felt safe that he was going to make the right decisions. Today, every team would love one. Look, I thought he was disappointing last year. He's a very highly paid player, but so far this year for this young group, he's been the one leading from the front. Averaging
11 intercepts and 6 intercept marks in a struggling team up until this week. Jamie Elliott goes down with an AC joint injury. Craig McRae says it's a 12-week injury after the game. This is a huge blow for Collingwood, especially because he went through the midfield quite a fair bit in the absence of Jordan De Goey today.
It's a big moment early on, down by a point. That's Jones. It's just a good tackle. I mean, unfortunate, and no one likes to see Elliott get injured, because I think he's one of the more dynamic forwards in the game. You can see there, who have surgery 12 weeks, as you mentioned. But I thought he did everything he could to avoid the head, and he rolled him. So I don't think there'll be a case for him to answer at the tribunal, like there wasn't for Rioli a week or so ago on Luke Davies-Uniacke from North.
We'll head to Optus Stadium now, where Fremantle got over the line against Greater Western Sydney. It was a 2-point ball game at three-quarter time, Kane, and then they kicked 6 goals to nothing in the final term.
Yeah, they couldn't get anything going, the Giants. A very even all game. There's Schultz. That was the moment that broke it open, and Collier finishes nicely. Schultz was awesome last week, won the medal, and was okay today. The pressure was there for the Giants, but they went inside 14 times in the last quarter. 14 entries, the Giants, and they did not score a goal. So the ball just exited far too easy. There's Switkowski kicking a goal on the back of a bit of a controversial push in the back from Jesse Hogan up the other end, and then Fremantle just broke the game open. So that's a good win for them.
Yep.
I fear for the Giants now, just with the talk around Leon Cameron. You've been in the game for a long time. When a coach says contract's on hold and you lose against a side that you should be above on the ladder, it starts to get a little bit nerve-wracking for him.
I'm not sure it's ever a coach's decision to put the contract talks on hold until the end of the season. Will Brodie for the Dockers. What a great piece of recruiting this has been. 36 disposals and 6 clearances tonight. This is a player that had 25 games in 5 years at Gold Coast, left at the end of last year to free up salary cap space at the Suns.
Well, I came into the office tonight and you were big on this, and it's a great pick-up from you, because no one's really noticed him building massive numbers this year, and you have. So 22 and 7 clearances, 26 and 4, 23 and 8, and 36. That must be a career high in 6 clearances. And how important for Fremantle, you lose Chera, Fife hasn't played, Mundy's about 40 years old, and you've got Sarong and Brayshaw, and he's 23. So doesn't he just fit nicely into that midfield? And you reckon he could be the next Jared Lyons?
He could be, someone who left Gold Coast for pretty cheap and goes on to forge a pretty good career for themselves. I want to bring your attention to this incident. We love Tom Green at the Giants because he provides them with so much. He kicked this great goal today. You won't see it on the first instance here, but his celebration caused a bit of a fracas afterwards.
Yeah, he does. He's gone with the celebration. We'll see it here, and he's just trying to punch the air. I think it's Chapman that gets in the way. Bang! And the Fremantle players thought he's gone after him after he's kicked the goal, and he's just celebrating, and that started a big melee. I hope it doesn't cost anyone some cash, but it was a bit comical.
Well, it's the perfect time to get into our AAMI clangers. Now we will start on Thursday night.
Do we have to?
Mitch Georgiades almost kicked goal of the year. It turned into one of the clangers of the year after starting pretty promisingly.
You don't have to bounce the ball, Mitch, so that bounce is fine. This one is not. You don't need to bounce that. You just kick the ball through for a goal, and Mays couldn't get it done in the goal square. Look at the time. They still hadn't kicked a goal to that point. That was
and that one was touched on the line as well, so that got reversed as well.
That's the AAMI clanger of the year so far.
Worse than Joe Danaher's in round 1?
Yes.
What about this? So the final quarter, it's a 1-point ball game. Everyone's nervous, and the whole game gets held up because there's people dressed as ferries trying to get off the
Port Phillip ferries. Couldn't get the game going. Measure this for me, can you?
Well, it was meant to be 50 metres. I reckon this little moment here where the ball gets knocked out of his hands and the umpire has to stop might have just confused things a little bit.
Yeah.
It ends up coming in, I think, just over 60 metres.
64, I reckon. Still going.
Keeps going.
Still
it's
going.
A long 50-metre penalty.
What's it? 64.5 metre penalty. So measuring practice for the umpires this week at training.
We'll head to the SCG where, as we mentioned off the top, North Melbourne came oh so close to one of the upsets of the season. They led by 14 points in the last quarter, but then the Swans turned it on.
Yeah, you had a feeling for North today. They were awesome the way they came. We'll get to that in a moment. But that man Heaney was sensational. We're going to have a look at some of his vision. But John Longmire praised the young guys. And what about McInerney's last quarter? He had 14 disposals, 4 marks, 3 clearances and goal. There he is, just bobbing up. Great kick there. So he was enormous. 30 disposals for the game. And Ronk came on. You don't have to see it as the medical sub as a really influential player. So he had 9 as well. And Sydney in the end, good enough to hold on against a North Melbourne side who responded really strongly after that disaster. And look, it's so close with a minute 40 to go on the goal line. And then that man Heaney ices the game. But David Noble said it was embarrassing last week. He'd be much prouder of the performance today. Yeah,
they would have wanted the win, but I think they can take plenty of heart from this performance against a side that's definitely going to be in premiership contention at the end of the season. You mentioned Isaac Heaney, 7 disposals and 2 goals throughout the last quarter. This was an incredible... This is the first of the 2 goals in this final term. Just keep an eye on his work rate here from the back half of the ground.
So young forwards at home, you want to play forward, this is what you got to do. Look how high he is up the ground. He's almost at his defensive 50. Now he's working across the ground. He's got a matchup that he likes. He's got one eye on the play, takes it off, realises there's a turnover. He knows the space is on the open side to the ground, and then he goes, like the speed that he went at. So he's probably run 150 metres to get on the end of that, and that's the work rate that is required. That's why I admire the forwards so much, because you're up the ground, you're putting pressure on, but as soon as you sniff the turnover, you're back, and then you're leading with speed, and he's got speed and power. It's great vision. He's kicked 11 goals for the year. He's been enormous, Isaac Heaney.
He had 11 tackles as well today. We'll get to our Saturday star. North Melbourne didn't win, but we'll give Jack Siebel the Saturday star. He's played back for the last year and a bit. He goes forward today, kicks 5 goals. He's only kicked 5 3 times in his career, and 2 have been against the Swans now.
Yeah, and he was the one from the start that got them going. So later, big tackle early, holding the ball, went back and kicked the first goal of the game. And he's always been a really tough competitor, great leader. And one thing he has always done well is kick the ball well, and he did that today. So, look, it's good coaching. I don't know if we see it enough where a coach actually pulls a surprise move. I can't imagine Sydney were expecting him to play forward when he's been down back for so long. But, yeah, an inspirational game. He would have been the match winner for North if they got it done. And that handball there may just be the handball of the year.
It was awesome. Friday night now, Geelong, Brisbane, 2 sides that are definitely going to be in premiership contention at year's end. Tom Hawkins swayed this game. Marcus Adams was pretty good on him most of the night, but he finishes with 5-3 and he's the match winner.
You don't see one-on-ones enough in footy. Everyone's guarding space, everyone's doing their own thing and playing system. We saw some genuine one-on-ones, and Hawkins is still the dominant one-on-one player in the game. You mentioned his marks, 7 of those. He kicked 5-3. He missed a couple of easy ones that he would like to kick, but he's the one that presented up at the ball, and his ability to read it in flight. I mean, he's an instant Hall of Famer. I mean, he's over 700 goals now, or certainly approaching 7. He's over 300 games now, and just been such a consistent performer for so long. Now, that's the controversial moment that we'll all talk about, but I thought Geelong dominated this game of footy. Plus 10 scoring shots, plus 18 inside 50s. Yeah, you can talk about that because it's late and it was a poor decision, and the explanation from the umpire didn't make a lot of sense, where he said your sort of momentum was moving you both forward, but he held his ground. Not sure that adds up. So that was a poor one, and the umpire, I'm sure, will put his hand up and say he got that wrong. But having a great season, they took 19 marks inside 50 of the Cats, and that was the difference in the game.
I loved Chris Fagan's response afterwards as well, refusing to blame the umpires, just took it on the chin, said we had our opportunities to win, we couldn't take them. Very similar to his response last year when Zach Bailey missed that holding the ball free kick in the goal square. Now, there's some good coaching from Chris Scott because they moved Sam de Koning back in Tom Stewart's absence. He started shaky, but he ended up having a pretty good game.
Oh, that tackle there that he missed. McCluggage finishes that early in the game. Then McStay was sort of all over him. He was misjudging the ball in flight. And I was like, how long is Chris Scott going to persist with him down back? I thought, maybe put him bench, ruck forward because of the efforts like that. But Chris Scott, it was great, as you said. It was good coaching. He held his nerve. And it was more about perhaps the future development of him. And then he was rewarded because he was pretty rock solid after quarter time. Now, you reckon they've got to persist with him down back, even when Stewart comes back?
I think they do. He was an All-Australian defender as a junior at the Nationals Carnival when he was drafted in 2019. I think that's his position. So he took 5 marks last night. All of them were intercepts. 4 of them were contested. I think they lack a bit of height sometimes down there, especially with Mark Blitzarves. goes into the ruck. So I think you've got to.
Yeah, and it allows, as you said, Blixarves into the ruck and Stanley. Those two are terrific. Who's the second best team in the comp? Did we learn anything out of that game?
I still think Brisbane. I think if it's on neutral ground, they might win a game like that more often than not. It's going to be a fascinating one to follow throughout the whole season.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Well, I was Bulldogs, but then seeing them tonight, the impotent forward and key defensive stocks as we've spoken about. I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Carlton, but history just tells you just to be a little bit hesitant on that. But anyway, we'll get to the Melbourne Port Adelaide game in a tick, but they're 15% better than the next best side.
They are. We will get to Thursday night now. We have to get there eventually. Port 0-4 for just the second time since it entered the AFL. And it was all about this spurt late in the second quarter. Port Adelaide actually held Melbourne without a goal for 40 minutes of action, and they kicked 5 in the next 11 minutes to completely take the game away.
That's what they do. That's what they did in the final series. Ryan Burton will be really disappointed with those two efforts that you just saw there, and also the first goal that Fritsch kicked in the game, and that's Viney bobbing up. So if you'd said to Ken Hinkley, you're going to keep Melbourne at 68 points for the game, he would have taken that. Yeah. But the problem was they couldn't score themselves, which we'll get to in a second. But there's Petrarca, that's what he does to Harms. And all of a sudden, you're 5 goals down and you haven't scored yourself because they're so structured and organised behind the ball.
Not sure there's been a more lopsided 32-point margin in the game's history. It was just that much one-sided action throughout the night. Port Adelaide tried to play differently. They tried to slow the game down as much as possible. They played this chip mark game style. It worked for 40 minutes, as we said, and then it all fell apart pretty quickly.
The only explanation I can give you as to why they did this is because they didn't want to go to stoppage. So they've only got Lycett. You're coming up against Gawn and Jackson. They're short on midfielders, Port Adelaide, and Melbourne have got Petrarca, Viney, and Oliver. And they thought, well, let's maintain possession. Let's take some sting out of the game. Let's dominate in that space so at least we don't go to a stoppage and we'll get the game on our terms. But clearly it didn't work because you play slow against them, you play wide, all of a sudden you're looking up, you're outnumbered, and you're kicking it to Lever and May and Gawn, who continually intercept mark the ball.
They used to be so fearless. They were 9-1 against premiership teams coming into this game. Are you worried about that cautious style?
Yeah, I'm worried about everything in relation to Port Adelaide, and it's not just one thing. You can point to Dixon, Aliir, Gray and Fantasia all not being there. So that you take your 5 out of your best 15 out of any side, you're in trouble. I'm worried about the potential for the hangover after 2 prelim finals and what that does psychological, the pressure that's on Ken Hinkley that's building from the crowd. So there's a whole heap of factors, but the point is he's been an excellent coach for the club. He turned the club around when he got there. He's been there for nearly 10 years and he earns the right to coach himself out of this. And any suggestion that you're going to move on the coach after 4 weeks is ridiculous. So Port fans got to cool their jets on that one. Let him try and coach his way out of it and then make a considered decision at the end of the year.
We've got Carlton next week. That's where we'll start our rest of the round. They play Gold Coast tomorrow on Sunday evening. They're looking to go 4-0. Essendon, Adelaide and Hawthorn St Kilda.
Yeah, a little bit nervous for the Essendon game. If I was in the prospect of going 0-4, no Stringer there, no Stewart, Taylor Walker and Rory Sloane, so some senior players back in for Adelaide. That's a danger game for them. I don't know about Hawthorn and St Kilda, can't split that one, so we'll wait and see. And then, a little bit of a risk for Carlton, but you would absolutely think they'd be too good for Gold Coast.
They should go in favourites. We'll get to our one more thing now. Adelaide is an absolute juggernaut in the AFL. There's been 5 grand finals in the AFLW's history so far. They've been in 4 of them. They've won 3 premierships. Danielle Ponter kicking that goal to seal this one today. Yeah,
she loved it too, and the crowd loved it. Dynasty, Matthew Clark's done an unbelievable job. The thing I admire about them is how hungry they are, and they front up each and every year and try and get better. They're terrific ambassadors for the sport. They've got great personalities, and they've built the sport in Adelaide to a huge level, and Hatch Hardy's a gun as well. Finished second in the AFLW award, which needs a name, by the way.
It does.
It needs a new name, and also won best on ground today. So
which also needs a name.
Which I was going to say, I was trying to think, what's the name of that? But it doesn't have one.
It does. Yeah. Plenty more coming on afl.com.au this week. Access all areas, AFL Daily, AFL Exchange. Tune into all of them. And Kane, see you next week.
See you next week, mate.